Welcome to the deep dive. You've asked us to take a really deep, systematic look at the very foundations of Buddhist thought.
We have. And to do that, we're digging into Maurice Walsh's translation of the Digha Nikaya.
The long discourses of the Buddha.
Exactly. And our mission here is to use these primary sources to try and, cut through centuries of cultural baggage and modern ideas.
To get to what was actually said.
To get to the historical environment the Buddha was in, and maybe more importantly, to pull out the pure foundational claims of his original teachings, the Dhamma.
In this specific translation, the one from 1986, that was a huge deal, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Walsh took it on because the older English versions were, well, they were clunky.
A bit dated.
Very dated, and they often had errors.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, English had become the world's main scholarly language. So for the Dhamma to be truly global, you needed a precise modern version. It was non-negotiable.
And that precision starts with the language itself.
It has to. When you read these Pali texts, Walsh is really clear. They use Roman spelling, but you have to remember the vowels have their continental values.
So, like in European languages.
Right. So long size, A or U. You'd say them like in father, machine, or rude. It seems like a small thing, but it's essential for getting it right.
And there's a little linguistic nugget in there that almost perfectly captures the teaching in just one sound shift.
The one about craving.
Yeah, the concept of thirst or craving.
It's beautiful. In Sanskrit, which Pali grew out of, the key word for craving, the very root of suffering, is tun.
Tu.
But in Pali, because of these deep sound changes over time, that word becomes tun.
It's simpler.
It's so much simpler. That phonetic shift, losing the R, changing the sibilant, it almost feels like it mirrors the whole process of simplifying the mind to find liberation.
Okay, so let's get into the man himself. Because the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, he wasn't born into some grand religious tradition.
No, he created one.
And he came from a really specific political and social world. What do the suttas tell us about that?
He lived in the Gangetic Plains, probably around the 6th century BC. And the sources are so important here because they correct later myths. Gautama's father, Suddhodana, was an elected chief.
Not a king.
Not a king in our modern monarchical sense.
Oh.
He was the chief of the Khattiya, or the warrior clan. Gautama was firmly part of that noble warrior class.
And that social context is just vital. We always hear that in ancient India, the Brahmin priests were on top.
Highest caste.
But the Buddhist texts, they often flip that. They put the Khattiya class above the Brahmins, then the merchants, then the workers.
Which tells you right away that his teachings had this kind of anti-establishment feel to them.
Right.
So his renunciation at 29 wasn't just some vague spiritual quest. The sources are clear. It was intensely pragmatic. He wanted to find the cause and the cure for dukkha.
And we have to pause on dukkha. It almost always gets translated as suffering, but you've said it's not enough.
It's woefully inadequate because dukkha is so much more subtle than just pain. It includes that, sure, but it's more about the unsatisfactory, frustrating, impermanent quality of all conditioned life.
Even happiness.
Especially happiness. If you have a moment of pure joy, dukkha is that nagging feeling that it's going to end. It's the existential anxiety that nothing you hold on to, no state, no thing, no person, is permanent.
That makes a lot of sense. And he wasn't alone in this search. He joined the Samans, the wandering ascetics.
He walked right into what must have been the most intellectually charged, competitive environment in the ancient world.
A real marketplace of ideas.
Absolutely. Sutta 2 gives us this amazing snapshot. It names 6 of his major contemporaries. And just hearing their positions, you can see the challenges Gautama was up against.
You had Purana Kassapa, who was an amoralist. He said your actions don't really have consequence.
Right. Then there's Makali Gosala, a total determinist. Everything is fixed. Fate is in control.
And Ajita Kesakamballi, the hardcore materialist.
Nothing exists but matter, and when you die, you're just annihilated. That's it.
And as if that wasn't enough, you had the Jain leader, the Nigantha Nataputta, who was a kind of relativist.
And my favorite, Sanjaya Balathaputta, the agnostic skeptic who just refused to answer. You'd say, if you ask me this, I say neither yes nor no.
An eel wriggler.
The ultimate eel wriggler.
So it's clear the Buddha had to find his own path by just rejecting all of these extremes.
He had to. He rejected determinism because that makes a moral path impossible. He rejected amoralism because that makes the path unnecessary. And he rejected materialism because that rules out any kind of future liberation.
And most importantly, he rejected the biggest philosophical idea of his time.
The Upanishadic view. The idea that the individual soul, the Atman, is identical with the big universal self, the Atman.
So why did he reject this whole concept of a supreme, permanent self?
The sources are pretty blunt about it, because that theory, quote, flies in the face of the evidence. Meaning, if you actually look at the world, what do you see? Ceaseless change, instability, impermanence, everything is in flux. So his teachings required this ultimate rejection of a fixed self, what's known as anatta,
Non-self.
not self. And that is the point where the Dhamma pivots away from almost every other spiritual path on earth.
So if everything is impermanent, how did he build his own path? That takes us to the Dhamma, starting with the middle way.
The middle way is his pragmatic stance for how to live. He'd seen both extremes, right?
The luxury of his youth and then
The excessive, near-fatal self-torture of his ascetic phase. The middle way avoids both. It's a path of skillful, wholesome action that isn't about luxury or self-denial.
And this whole view of reality is summed up in the 3 marks, the Tilakon. This is really the core insight.
It is. The first 2 apply to all compounded conditioned things, what are called sankharas.
Okay.
First, sabbe sankhara anicca, compounded things are impermanent. Second, sabbe sankhara dukkha, compounded things are inherently unsatisfactory.
But the 3rd mark is the big philosophical leap.
It's the huge one, sabbe dhamma anatta, which means all things, and this is critical, including the unconditioned element, nibbana, are without a self.
Okay, we need to define what atta means here. Because when you say no self, it sounds strange.
It does, and in normal speech, atta is just a pronoun, myself, yourself. But what anatta is denying is atta as a noun, this imaginary permanent entity, this soul that we cling to and call me.
So if there's no permanent self, what are we? What is this personality we experience?
We experience the 5 khandhas, or the aggregates,
Which are?
form, which is the body, feeling, or sensations, perception, which is recognition, volitions, which are our thoughts and intentions, and consciousness.
And the insight is that these 5 things are not a solid me.
The insight is that these 5 components are constantly changing, arising, passing away, and none of them, alone or together, make up some permanent, unchanging self. The self is just a convenient label for this process.
This brings up a huge potential confusion. If there's no permanent me, who is acting? Who gets the results of karma?
Right. Doesn't that sound like the annihilationism the Buddha already rejected?
Exactly.
To get around this, you have to understand the 2 levels of truth the texts talk about. First, there's conventional truth, samudhisaka. That's how things appear. We see a solid table. We see a person named you.
And then there's the other level.
Then there's ultimate truth, paramatthisaka. And on that level, existence is just a mere process of physical and mental phenomena. There's no enduring substance underneath.
The analogy of the table works so well here. Conventionally, it's a solid table.
But ultimately, from a physics perspective, it's mostly empty space, a buzzing field of energy. Both views are useful, but one is ultimately more accurate.
So you use conventional language, but you don't forget the ultimate reality.
That's the philosophical genius of it. The self is conventionally real, so you have to act morally, but ultimately it's a process. And that brings us to the law that governs action in this reality, karma.
Most people hear karma and they think fate or
Yeah.
some kind of cosmic justice system.
But the sources are so much more precise and, honestly, much more empowering.
So what is it?
Well, karma literally means action. But the Buddha defined it very specifically as volition, satana.
Intention.
It's all about the intention behind the act. Good or bad acts, rooted in a conscious choice, lead to results, which are called vipaka, or ripening.
So the key here is free will. The act of choosing is the engine of karma.
Precisely. Our choices are conditioned, of course, but we're not totally determined. There's a great modern analogy in the source material. Karma is like programming our future. Every choice, every intention sets the conditions for what we'll experience later.
And that programming is what connects one life to the next, which is why the texts are so careful to say rebirth, not reincarnation.
A vital distinction.
Right.
Reincarnation implies a fixed soul, an essence that moves from body to body.
A little ghost in the machine.
Right. But Buddhism says no soul passes on. The classic analogy is lighting one candle from another. The second flame depends on the first, but the first flame didn't literally jump across.
Or like billiard balls. The energy is transferred, but the first ball stays behind.
Perfect. A new consciousness arises that is dependent on the old one. It maintains an illusion of continuity, but it's a new arising.
And this cycle just keeps going until you achieve nibbana, which literally means blowing out, and is probably the most misunderstood concept of all.
It is. People hear blowing out and think annihilation.
Which would make the whole path pointless.
Exactly. If nibbana were just obliteration, the materialists would have been right all along. Why go through all that effort? No, nibbana has to be defined by what it is, not just by what it isn't.
So what is the positive definition, if it's not a supreme self or an eternal heaven?
It's defined as the destruction of the three fires: greed, hatred, and delusion. Since craving is the source of all dukkha, when you extinguish those fires, the result is the highest bliss, paramam sukha. It's the ultimate freedom.
And the sources are clear that it's a transcendental reality. It's the one unconditioned thing in the whole system.
Yes. The definitive quote is from the Udana. There is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, uncompounded. And because that exists, a deliverance is visible from that which is born, become, made, compounded.
It's the timeless reality that exists outside of the process.
The asankhya-taratu, the unconditioned element.
Okay, so we have a metaphysical structure. No self-conditioned existence is unsatisfactory. Action is volition. Let's look at the actual user's guide, the Four Noble Truths.
The Buddha was very clear about why he taught these four truths: suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path.
He said they were taught because they are conducive to welfare, to perfect disenchantment, to nibbana.
It's an engineering solution for the human condition.
And that solution required an incredible level of ethical discipline. Sutta 1 goes into the morality the Buddha practiced, which it earned him praise from worldlings.
I love this section because the details are so specific. He refrained from destroying seeds and plants, from roots, stems, shoots, the whole list. A commitment to non-harming that goes down to the smallest level.
And the list of unedifying conversation he avoided is fascinating. It's not just gossip.
No, it's talk about kings, armies, wars, food, speculation about real estate.
Basically all the trivial and anxiety-inducing chatter that fills our days.
And he totally rejected disputation. That kind of ego-driven argument where you have to say, my way is right, your way is wrong.
Because it's not about winning, it's about inner purification.
Exactly. But the most revealing list is what he called base arts and wrong means of livelihood.
The professionalization of superstition.
Completely. Think about it. No palmistry, no dream interpretation, no fortune-telling. He rejected predicting war outcomes. Our side will win, their side will lose, and judging the quality of gems or cows or even slaves.
It shows this deep commitment to a life free from exploitation and magic, a life rooted in honesty.
Yes. And the immediate rewards of this, the visible fruits, are shown so vividly in Sutta 2.
With the story of King Ajatasattu,
A man who killed his own father to get the throne. He goes to the Buddha and asks, what's the tangible payoff of being a monk right now?
And the Buddha doesn't start with nibbana.
No, he gives a practical example. Say the king's own steward becomes a monk. Instantly, the king himself would pay him respect, offer him robes, food, protection. The first visible fruit is social respect and security.
That's just the baseline, though. The more excellent fruits are all internal.
Right. The path goes from that ethical discipline to internal purification, guarding the senses, overcoming the 5 hindrances.
And the texts have these great metaphors for the hindrances. Sensual desire is like being in debt. Ill will is like a sickness.
Sloth is a prison, restlessness is slavery, and doubt is being lost in a desert. Overcoming them is the next stage.
And the absolute peak of that development is attaining the 4 jhanas, the deep meditative absorptions.
Which is where things get complicated.
Yeah.
Because the suttas say these states can lead to supernormal powers.
Flying, reading minds, seeing past lives, all the stuff people get excited about.
And yet the Buddha explicitly rejected using them to convert people.
Sutta 11 lays it out. 3 types of miracles, and he was not a fan of the first 2.
The miracle of psychic power flying, becoming many, he rejected it because a skeptic could just say it's a trick. The Ganhara charm.
And the miracle of telepathy.
Same thing. A skeptic could just say it's another trick, a Manika charm. They aren't reliable ways to get to ultimate truth.
So the only miracle he approved of
Was the miracle of instruction, Anusasani Piyarya.
the teaching itself is the miracle.
It is, because it leads to verifiable, wonderful, transformative results. It leads to nibbana. It's the application of the wisdom in the path that changes reality for you, not some flashy display of power.
And we see that focus on process, on impermanence, right up to the very end of his life.
His final teaching to his attendant, Ananda, it just encapsulates everything.
All those things that are dear and pleasant to us must suffer change, separation, and alteration.
Whatever is born, become, compounded, is liable to decay, that it should not decay, is impossible. It just brings everything right back to that first mark of existence.
So we've used Walsh's translation to get this deep, structured knowledge. The historical context, the rejection of a self, the rigor of the middle way, the nature of Nibbana, we've categorized all these views.
And we come back to Sutta 1, the Tathagata, the enlightened one. He knew the origins of all 62 wrong views. He understood how reality worked. And yet, he was not attached to that knowledge.
The real liberation is in letting go of even that.
Exactly, letting go of the intellectual possession of the facts.
So here's the final provocative thought for you, the listener. We've just spent this time giving you the structure, the philosophy, everything you need to be really well informed. But the deepest liberation comes from letting go of the illusion of self, and that self can cling very tightly to being an expert, to having all this knowledge.
Oh, I'd love to.
So is the act of acquiring and categorizing all these complex views a necessary step toward wisdom? Or is true wisdom realized when you finally accept that some ultimate knowledge, like the positive nature of Nibbana, is simply, as the texts say, beyond the range of purely scholarly discussion?
The ultimate challenge isn't just getting the knowledge. It's releasing the attachment to the one who thinks they have it. It turns the whole scholarly project back on itself.
Thank you for providing us with the material for this deep dive into the foundational discourses of the Dhamma. We hope this knowledge serves as the ultimate instruction.